Tone. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tonetalks. You know, I have the wonderful Yvette Cornell here. We haven't done one of these in quite some time, but we're here to have this discussion. Biden's budget came out today, but something else happened. Something explosive. Yvette, you want to say hello to the audience?
What's going on, fam? How's everybody doing? Missed y'all last night.
So, y'all know that Biden's budget came in. It's a lot, trillions less. We weren't included, no way. We told you down ballot Democrat. I've explained, Yvette's explained the strategy behind that. It wasn't necessarily to throw full support behind the Democrats. It was to support your own family, who largely lacks wealth all across this country, just like our own. But in addition, today, I'm going to let Yvette lay it out about what happened today with the announcement out of the Wall Street Journal about these $450,000 payments to the, I guess, separated immigrant families. Go ahead, Yvette.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that for people who don't understand down ballot Democrat, we didn't vote for Biden. So stop coming in my country and say, if y'all hadn't made us vote for Biden, no, you're just stupid. So stop coming into the thread and saying that. So what happened today was we saw Wall Street Journal reported, it wasn't us, Wall Street Journal reported that they're in negotiations to give migrant families $450,000 a piece. So you could legitimately even have $1 million families. Based on this reparations for migrants who were separated at the border. Now, we have gone, how long we gone, Antonio, without reparations for ADOS? How long?
Hundreds of years. And we built America.
Never got anything. So that's what happened today. They're apparently in negotiations to make this reparations for migrants who came in 2018 a reality.
And understand, we're talking about the reality of not only ADOS folks being an underclass, but basically your vote built Biden. Your family's vote, because we voted down ballot. We voted for the senators, we voted for the Congress members, we built the party, our families built the party, and we still advocate for them. Biden is not there without your grandmama's vote. So now what's happening is they want to use that vote, not for reparations for you and your family, but for this migrant reparations, which we'll get into. Let me say this, please. Let me stop for a second. Support Yvette Cornell's channel. Support my own channel. We bring this content, and so often what happens is without you, without us, it doesn't spread. Press the notification bell and the bell. Subscribe. Share this video. But let's get right into the discussion. And I caveat this because I don't need to do this for the ADOS listeners, for the normal Black American listeners, for white American listeners that listen to the show. This is not about being xenophobic. This is not about an attack on immigrants. This is about us standing up for the claim and the right of American descendants of slavery to demand trillions of dollars from a government they built. So let's just get right into the discussion. So when we talk about this thing, we can't talk about this thing without having some kind of context. They have this meeting, this secret meeting. I'm going to go through a bit of an article, but I want Yvette to chime in before I do that. The Wall Street Journal, through investigation, finds out about this. It's been ongoing for months. So they've been talking for months about how to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to migrant workers. But in the middle of the show, I'm going to talk to you about how these people are making like $8 a day where they live. Why would you give people $450,000 that make $8 a day where they live before we even deal with you haven't paid for reparations for U.S. slavery? But in addition, you had people like Clyburn, and I'm going to cut the video in the final version, basically tell us there would never be cash payments for reparations for U.S. slavery.
Well, let me tell you something. If you wait on cash payments to come out of reparations, you're going to wait forever. It's not going to happen.
Well, I don't know if they advised Clyburn. I don't know if he understood. But they talking about cash payments for this right here, for this migrant workers, the migrant separation, and they're not talking no small number. Yvette, you want to chime in?
Well, I just want to say, understand the group. We've always talked about there's no problem with cash payments. We saw in the COVID bill, we saw Native Americans get an allotment. So this country's never had any problem with cash payments. But understand, this is 3 years ago. This was 2018. It's 2021. And it took them 3 years to say, hey, let's give them $450,000. And let's get in here and figure out how to give reparations. Now, understand, a lot of people that some of y'all voted for too, Ocasio-Cortez, y'all got on me. Some of y'all, Yvette, she's a leftist. She's she ain't doing enough for reparations. She's not asking who are the migrants at the border. We have to figure this out. She's not asking whether or not this incentivizes other people to do that. She was one of the main ones out in front of that. Remember, she was the same one who has Ta-Nehisi Coates. Who is black? I think we're all black. We just got to figure that out. So I think at some point we have to understand that this ain't it. Just understand that America just don't want cash payments for you and me. That's it. They're in favor of cash payments for everybody else. And I think you have to understand that they're about to put this group of migrants who came here and got separated from their family ahead of us and a lot of other white people and people of color or whoever else, right? They're going to put them ahead of us in terms of the wealth totem pole. So we get locked out of wealth. We get locked out of wealth for generations. People cross the border, get separated, and instantaneously they get what we never could get. How is that fair?
Let's frame this thing. I posted something yesterday, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You guys have full families, and I don't know what you're sharing. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is, to me, one of the most powerful tweets definitely of 2021, possibly of our last decade, because this tweet frames the reality and the context of what wealth has done just recently. Between 2020 Q4, and let me frame the tweet. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances releases data every quarter. And what that data shows is not only the amount of wealth held by race, but how that wealth is broken down. For those people that have never seen this, you got too far in life if you're above the age of 18 and haven't seen this. It's not your fault. They don't really show it. But what happened is what I'm about to share with you. Between 2020 Q4, there's 4 quarters in a year, and 2021 Q2, white America added $10 trillion in wealth and now have $125 trillion. In half of a year of 2021, they added $6 trillion in just stocks and mutual funds. That's nearly the same amount of wealth as all of Black America ADOS folks combined. Black wealth is pretty much, ADOS wealth is pretty much all pension right now. I mean, mostly pension, not all pension, mostly pension. So that means retired boomers have nearly half of our wealth inside of their pensions, and we won't have any of that, and they'll die with them. So when we talk about reparations, we're talking about a world where in literally less than 6 months, maybe 8 months, white America went from 115 trillion to 125. And all of Black America might be worth $7 or $8 trillion, with most of it being pension. What do you think about that, Vet, in context of this discussion before I get into this article?
Well, it shows that we don't have wealth, and we don't have wealth because we're plundered. If all the wealth that we do have, or the majority of it, or an extremely large segment of it goes with the boomers, and it goes with them, it dies when they die, and they're aging out, then we're left with a nominal amount of wealth that is not enough for this America. And we don't have it. The reason we don't have it is key, because somebody else will say, well, the people who just crossed the border don't have it either. The reason we don't have it is because of 400 years of oppression, and we're the people who built the country. That's what matters. And that's why we deserve what we deserve. And America has no problem giving it to somebody else who just crossed the border. Now, listen, they didn't say we got to have a study to figure out whether or not we're going to give migrants reparations or whatever. But they did for us. They said, well, we couldn't even get a study. We couldn't even get a study. That was lowballing it. We couldn't even get a study. And we told those people, listen, a study's not going to do it. We've been studied more than any other group. We've been studied more than the Galapagos turtles and everybody else. The owl. Everybody knows we've been plundered. We know the cost of it. It's just time to pay it. And they said, you can't have cash payments. Clyburn, like you just said, you can't have cash payments. Cash payments never gonna happen. We've been told that since Reconstruction that cash payments are never gonna happen. And then they come out here and say we're going to give $450K to migrants who got separated at the border. Doing one incident, we've had a multi-generational oppression for 400 plus years. They had one separation at the border that they crossed illegally or came to seeking refuge or refugee status or whatever. And now we're back here. And nobody's saying that you shouldn't seek refugee status. What we're saying is, listen, you cannot get a lottery win because the government separated you. And you certainly don't get more than the people who built the country, who've always been denied. That's what we're saying.
And I would add in, this is our administration, period. So like these people can't vote. So this is they didn't vote Biden in the office. It's your vote that your family's vote that put Biden in the office, and your vote down ballot that put the people that support this budget that he has, that the senators, the Congress members, it's your vote. So people that didn't vote are about to get a windfall for crossing illegally, while you're being told that I don't even want to talk about your family being enslaved. And when we talk about slavery, understand we're talking about not just the labor. Your family was the money itself. A male slave with 3 years of field training was worth the same amount as a house. And it would be traded around, and that's what built America, period. That, the cotton, without the slave, there is no America, but somehow you don't have no wealth, and now they're going to give $450,000 per person, or they're discussing it. To even discuss it is insane for a 2-year separation thing. They're not paying no black children for being separated from their fathers from nonviolent offenses. And I did the documentary Freeway Cracking the System, and it showed that the Nicaraguans said that they were complicit with the drug sales. Meaning the U.S. government was complicit with the Nicaraguans with the drug sales these young boys were selling, and they got these long sentences. Nobody's talking about that separation. So here we are, and you can go catch that on Amazon, Freeway Cracking the System, Emmy nomination for it. Documentary we did, separated families behind complicit actions of the U.S. government involving drug sales. Where's the payment for that? And so I bring this up in context of this discussion to bring it back, because I want to read a little bit of this article, because we got to get into it, Yvette. This article is something else. U.S. in talks to pay hundreds of millions to families separated at the border. Government is considering payments of $450,000 per person, affected by Trump's administration's zero tolerance policy. Okay. The Biden administration in talks to offer immigrant families that were separated during the Trump administration around $450,000 a person in compensation, according to people familiar with the matter, as several agencies work to resolve lawsuits filed on behalf of parents and children who say the government subjected them to lasting psychological trauma. We're going to come back to that, Yvette, psychological trauma. The U.S. Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services, all these are under Biden's administration, are considering payments that could amount to close to $1 million a family. Where's the NAACP? When we were boycotting for Byron Allen in a lawsuit and Comcast for ourselves, for our right to have media, the NAACP left. Do you guys remember? They fought for the immigration case that was the day before Byron Allen's Comcast case. We put 500 people out front of the steps of the Supreme Court, and they left. I don't know if it was on purpose, but if you was there the day before and you're not going to stay for a national black media case, what's your purpose? And so I come back to it, and I say this in context of this, because services are considered payments that could amount to close to $1 million a family, a middle black family in this nation worth about $1,500, $2,000 without depreciating assets. Most of the families that crossed the border illegally from Mexico to seek asylum in the U.S. included one parent and one child, and the people said many families would likely get smaller payouts depending on their circumstances, the people said. Before I finish, Yvette, chime in on that. The psychological trauma, the $1 million payments.
You mentioned one period, and that's an important period with mass incarceration. Understand the psychological trauma of slavery, the psychological trauma of Jim Crow, the psychological trauma of redlining, the psychological trauma of that Reconstruction period, the psychological trauma of discrimination in housing, the psychological trauma of having no money in a wealthy nation. There's nothing here that we haven't experienced that cannot be defined as psychological trauma, and it's passed down. So this idea that can be the basis of a lawsuit, I don't even understand how they filed a lawsuit, but that's a whole nother thing. But we have to understand how this happened. This happened because they had people in those rooms who were advocating for them. The thing that happens for us is that nobody advocates for us. Nobody's ever even going to go over there and say, listen, this is outrageous. You're 400 years late on the payment to American descendants of slavery. You were supposed to give 40 acres of the mule. You are hundreds of years late on that. And in 3 years, you're going to give it to somebody else who just got here for being separated at the border. You took real risk coming here. Now, listen, like we said, this is not about xenophobia. This is about, listen, you ever do, I talked about this before. You ever do math in those equations? There's an order of operations. I'm not saying even what you should or should get, but nobody anything, in my estimation, until we are paid. Every other group that has gotten anything, it has been an injustice. We go first. And everybody is getting paid, and we're electing these people. That's why I'm so happy I didn't vote for Biden. I'm so happy. I'm so vindicated. Because we told y'all, don't vote that top of the ticket. Use the top of the ticket as leverage. And not enough people did it, and here we are. We're about to watch migrants get reparations. And it's going to set the stage for who knows? The next, it might be the LGBT community has psychological trauma, and they get reparations next. And we're still out here, just ADOS, still don't have anything, still poor, just watching everybody else get a check. They cut the check so quick. They told us no money. We got to study. We don't have it, but they cut the check just that quick. Or they're in negotiations to do it just like that right now.
Remember all these people: Sonny Hoskins, Amanda Seal, Alicia Garza, Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, who now has an MSNBC show. All these people said Biden supporting Biden, and he just needs to pick a black woman as a VP. And here we are, and I'm hearing dead silence, crickets. Not just about this, but about the entire failure. The entire failure to recognize that ADOS people are getting nothing. We talk about the HBCUs. I did a show in April talking about how UCLA is pledging to try to be a MSI, minority serving institution, through Hispanics. The problem is that they sell everything through HBCUs, but they make it about MSIs. Where are these people? AKAs, where y'all at? And so here we are having this discussion about this national problem, and it don't seem like everybody's ready to get real about what's going on, because we the ones doing the show tonight. But let's get back to this article. I'm going to share a little more of it because there's so much here. The American Civil Liberties Union, which represents families in one of the lawsuits, has identified, that's the ACLU, about 5,500 children separated at the border over the course of Trump's administration, citing figures provided to it by the government. The number of families eligible under the potential settlement is expected to be smaller. The people said, as government officials aren't sure how many will come forward. Around 940 claims have so far been filed by the families, the people said. The total potential payout, follow this event, could be $1 billion or more. Let me read one more section from this thing, because this is an important section. President Biden has agreed that the family separation policy is a historical moral stain on our nation that must be fully remedied. This is the same Biden who before, in the Washington Post, this is back in the 70s, said he shouldn't be responsible for his grandfather's sins when it came to talking about reparations.
So why should he be responsible for Trump's sins? That was Trump, wasn't you, right? Why are you responsible for that?
And it was, I mean, the gravity of the disrespect of this, I don't know if it's even within capacity to understand. Like, they didn't vote for Biden on top of it. I know I've said it 3 times. Like, this is, they didn't vote for him. We came through American slavery, chattel slavery for hundreds of years. And it's ongoing, that oppression. And then they don't even talk about our issues, and they give us a study instead of giving us real politics. Part of the way this came out is this came from Wall Street Journal. You know, this is a legitimate news source doing investigative reporting. A DHS attorney complained on a conference call that the payouts could amount to more than some families of 9/11 victims received. Other people disputed. This is one of the people, I believe, that wrote the story, a reporter out of the Wall Street Journal. Other people disputed the comparison, given that the U.S. wasn't responsible for the tax. The 9/11 fund average awards of $2 million tax-free. So we don't, this 450 might even be tax-free. I'll give context to it in a second, because it's not likely that it's going to stay here. It's going to go back to Honduras and Mexico. It's not going to cycle here. Not saying all of it, but a good chunk of it, these people are not legally here. So they'll just take it back with them when they get deported. The ACLU has ID'd about 5,500 children separated at the border under Trump. And this goes back to the total potential payout could be $1 billion or more. What do you think about that level of payout, Yvette?
Well, I think it's insane. And it is too. We were always told every time we went reparations, that reparations is education, reparations is healthcare. You can't even get Negroes to say reparations is a cash payout. We had a whole reparations hearing the other day, and most of the people said, well, it could be a lot of things. I don't know. It could be roller skates. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. But it's education, it's healthcare. We just got to think about all the ways reparations could happen. But with them, it's cash. Everybody knows reparations is money. And so only with us do we get told that it's not what you think it is. That the wealth was plundered, and we say wealth has to be repaid. And they come back and say, no. You have to just have it in healthcare, education, or Clyburn just start scratching his face. Like the hypocrisy is so on display right now. And if everybody doesn't wake up, if there was ever a moment to wake up, I always say, when are we going to have the critical mass? Like we have a lot of people now, but when are we going to have the critical mass to wake up? If there was ever a moment, this is the moment. And I don't care, like some of them, the Hondurans might stay because it's violent back where they come from or whatever. And they'll have way more money than you have, than I have. And we built this place for them to be here. What sense does that make? There would be no black or brown people in this country without ADOS. It wouldn't be possible.
And I also say, we also have to give context. And I think for a lot of people that don't travel internationally, I'm not talking about just tourism either. I'm talking about actual do some kind of commerce internationally, go to Tijuana for different services and things. You have no context for how insanely, like if Kamala Harris, who's now supposed to be in charge of the border, is the czar, you telling me she's not part of these meetings? This is the same Kamala that told us that she's not going to do nothing for black people. Isn't VP Kamala Harris in charge of the Mexican border for the Biden administration, and thus leading the talks to give these immigrant families this wealth? She told the Griot she's not going to do nothing specifically for black people.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But so I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No.
She ran from Jamie On, as he called out, Jamie On being somebody in South Carolina that followed our shows and asked her about reparations. She told him back, what about your housing? Let me say
Excuse me, sir. Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations, Senator Harris? Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations? Senator Harris.
Never want to talk to black people.
Let me say it again. This is not speculation. I'll cut it in. We looking at this thing. Why did Biden put Harris in charge of the border? So she's in charge of the border crisis. And then you got Senator Kamala Harris writing an op-ed in Elle magazine. We must act to protect dreamers before the new year. But telling black folks that she's not going to do nothing specifically for black people. But let's go back to that $450,000. And I'll let you speak on Kamala after I share this part. It's not $450,000. It's, I don't know. Is it the equivalent of $10 million? I don't know. Because you have to put it against the ability then. Because, I mean, these people are here illegally and probably part of a deportation process. So you're going to give them this money, and then they're likely to go back to Mexico or go back to Honduras. Not saying guaranteed, but it's likely. When we look at this thing, Mexico's National Minimum Wage Commission announced in a decision to increase the general minimum wage to 141 Mexican pesos. That's $7.10 a day. So people that make $7.10 a day are about to be given $450,000. Make that make sense. How does that stabilize that country? Interjecting those people back into those communities. I'm not even making that argument, but if you're talking about Kamala and her talking about stabilizing these countries, I don't know how this does this. Now, in addition, why would they get that kind of wealth? They're going to go back being the most elite of the society. This article here talks about, I think, in Honduras. Let me see if I can zoom in so I can read it a little bit. It's crazy, Yvette. You got to read this. Where do I want to start? I want to read this thing just to share it with you guys. International headcount estimates for 2018 show that 16.5% of the Honduran population lived on less than $1.90 a day. 51.1% lived on less than $5 a day. So you're going to give people that live on $5 a day, where half the country, $400 and some $1,000, and then everything going to stay here? Even if they do stay here, that money will be remitted. It'll be just sent back. They get to be here, and I send the money back into these places. None of this makes any sense. And I don't know what you're going to do about your local politicians tomorrow, next week, going forward. But you need to be asking some questions. Can you speak to Kamala first, and then maybe this as well?
Well, I think when you speak to Kamala, you got to speak to the whole thing. Like, because people should be calling. I don't even know how involved Congress is, but everybody should be letting that Congress people know, listen, I'm not with this. I don't know whether you're involved. This is the administration. Let the administration know. You talk to the president more than I do. But I think, you have to answer for it. I think the AKAs and everybody who said, Kamala, we just got to have a black woman, have to be held account for their inability to learn a lesson. Because we should have learned from Barack Obama that just because somebody shares your complexion or whatever the case may be, doesn't mean anything. Black faces in high places does not mean anything for you. You have to be a gender different. We've been telling people this over and over and over again. And we have to hold these people to account. Listen, your inability to learn from your mistakes is costing us everything. And then when stuff goes left, y'all go real quiet, and you don't want to talk about the fact that the migrants are getting the reparations, or you want to say, well, it's just they treated you bad. Yeah, where's my money though? Where's the money? But
you keep your interview with Kamala, or you keep whatever little show you get from this. Like, I don't think we do enough critical analysis. What did somebody get from this? Who were they before they start speaking for Kamala, and who were they after? And I think for so many instances, we see what happened with Obama and MSNBC. We have to ask, did that happen again? When we look at this thing, why did you advocate for Kamala? Was it because you believed in her, or because you were ready to get something from it? And that's for each of y'all to ask.
But even with that, Antonio, remember what happened after Obama left office? All them little Negroes who was at MSNBC got canceled. So what y'all gonna think? What y'all think gonna happen once Kamala gone? Y'all think y'all all gonna still be at MSNBC? Mm-hmm. No, you get used. You get used. You're so cheap. You just cheap, and you sell off your people. You sell off your sales for nothing. Either that, or you don't, or you lack critical thinking skills. I don't know, but like these people from the people who supported Kamala was like, she an AKA and she went to Howard. From the people who supported Obama, like there's an inability to like be politically mature people, and we can't exist in a space of complex political thinking and navigating with these unserious people.
I have to agree. And I'm looking at this discussion, and I just think a lot of people got things to answer for today. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm asking myself, even as we look at Biden's budget, this budget has been scaled back to a point where it's just climate change and a few other trinkets, and it's nothing here. Now, he already wasn't going to talk about reparations. How is it? Do you understand the gravity of the day they finally get this budget rolling? The day that they finally look like they have a deal. This coming out about it. They said they don't have money for people's teeth, Americans' teeth. But now they have money to give migrants that were separated, that came here illegally, $450,000. Make any of that make sense, Vet? What you think about Biden scaling back this budget?
Well, he was always going to do it. Like this whole thing with Joe Manchin was always a well orchestrated dance. Biden didn't want to do something really big, and Joe Manchin gave him an out. And it was always going to be that way. So now Joe Manchin has a bunch of commercials for when he faces the next Republican, so that he can show, oh my goodness, I really do stand up to Democrats. And Biden gets the scale down budget that he himself wanted. This was a well orchestrated dance. Doesn't surprise anybody, and I didn't have any expectations for it. That's why I didn't even talk about it much.
And can we revisit what I've talked about on my show? You have to understand that every state has 2 senators. And that should have been changed a long time ago, and definitely should be one of the clarion calls of the moment, that senators should be based on population, because these states they just don't have people. He comes from a state that only has 1.7 million people. LA County alone has 10 million. I believe California's 40 million. We only have 2 senators for that whole state. So that makes white votes count exponentially more, each white vote. I mean, each white vote might be worth 1,000 like people of color votes in California. or black votes in California, let me say. Now, what I'm seeing is that we don't understand that he comes from a state that's 94% white. So what has happened is we voted for our grandmamas, our aunties, our cousins, voted for this administration. We voted down ballot, and he gets to take that and then advocate for himself and for his state and for these few white people. Let me go further. Look at this thing. When you look, he was elected by 290,000 people. Joe Manchin, who is basically taking control of the entire process of budgets for America, was elected by 290,000 pretty much white folk. That is a town in California. He only won his election by 19,000 people. Do you understand how problematic that is? And that's what I'm saying is like, that's how we get here, where we don't understand these components. We don't understand our wealth. So we end up in a place where there's secret meetings going on. And Adolph told you that was the case. And we get casted. When we brought the reparations discussion to you guys, nobody was talking about it. Nobody. Ta-Nehisi Coates had went to France or whatever. That wasn't a political project. And the amount of Congress members that were supporting HR 40 had disappeared. Obama had killed it. By not supporting it. We revised, we basically used economic data and people all across this country watching these shows to give this energy. But we were almost told we were told, and like I said, this will be in the final video, that cash payments they're never going to happen. That's exactly what this man, who's the whip, who's Clyburn, most powerful black man in Congress, said cash payments won't happen. Can he come out tonight and say cash payments won't happen for these migrants? Tonight. What you think, Vet?
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. He's a tool. Like if somebody told me that they saw Nancy Pelosi kick Clyburn in the butt, I'd be like, well, sound like that could happen. Like that's who he is. He gets run by that group. He came out and said, he didn't even come out for us. He came out and said the Capitol Hill wasn't diverse enough. And Nancy Pelosi took him to the office. He came out shucking and jiving. Well, I misspoke. I guess I got my words confused. That's who he is. And see, if you don't have advocates in that room who say, no, this is not going to happen. This is unfair. And I'm not even going to have a discussion about this or anything like this, especially since you haven't given payments to the people who are due the most and who are owed a debt for 400 years. This is a labor debt. It is a moral debt. It is every kind of debt you can imagine. If you can't say that, then you shouldn't represent us. And I don't know what we're doing in terms of our political leadership. You know, I was going to talk about the whole Issa Rae and the Amanda Seals thing about the AKAs last night. And the AKAs and too many of our institutions like to focus on stuff that doesn't matter. Who cares what actress is wearing your stuff? What you should care about is what your AKA VP is doing right now, and what the president of the United States is doing right now, and what they're enacting, and that's the impact it's going to have on you. You have Howard University students right now talking about how they have rats and how they're being followed on campus, and how security isn't helping them, and how the administration isn't helping them. And I haven't seen, if I'm incorrect, let me know. I haven't seen Kamala run up on that campus and try to take care of that. This was always about optics for her. It was always about putting on this kind of mask of ADOS-ness. Nobody's saying you're not black, you're not ADOS, and you kind of mask yourself in something. And once again, our people fell for it. I thought it was over with Obama. We're not going to fall for that no more. We got that, and we don't. And now we are in a place where we might be watching the saddest thing ever. Is for migrants who just came 3 years ago to get reparations. And we who have been waiting for 400 plus years are still left to starve out in this rich America.
And understand the scale of it. Again, it's $450,000, which is something that literally, I mean, they were talking about like education vouchers and house vouchers for all Americans. And we get some of it because it's all American political will. Because there's no care about political will. They had these meetings ongoing for months and didn't tell nobody. They just found out, I think Wall Street Journal did an investigation or something. So like these meetings have been going on. And I don't know if they will make these payments and not say nothing. And so these meetings, these meetings have been going on. And what essentially is crazy about the moment is we take these meetings and we then don't hold people accountable to what they mean. And what it means is HR 40 makes no sense. We don't need a study. Nobody's telling them to have a study. Nobody's saying we need a study to see the impact and see whether, I mean, they came here illegally. Why? Like, I'm not talking about whether they should get a fair bus trip or a plane ride back to their country. We're not even talking about whether they should get to stay 90 days while some kind of civil unrest goes down. We're talking about $450,000 that can then be taken and transferred into a country where people make anywhere from $2 to $7 a day or live on that. Make that make sense. I asked the author of the Wall Street Journal article, the original article about the migrants getting paid this money, why don't they have to do an HR 40 study? Why don't they have to study it for like a decade to figure out what they should get? Why don't they have to do an HR 40 study that takes years to see what they are owed, like we require for U.S. reparations for slavery? ADOS told you that we could demand, and that you, meaning you as the audience, that we could demand trillions for U.S. slavery that occurred over hundreds of years and built America on our families' backs. From that, myself and Yvette got called controversial. At the highest level, ABC News, New York Times. Controversial means you can't do politics because we're going to make it seem like you crazy. That didn't do good enough, so they just came out with Harvard allowing move on people who had never written any articles educationally. You can check the authors themselves. Some of them actually went and worked for the Biden administration after this paper.
We'll move on.
They wrote this article that says, Yvette didn't talk about COVID. But hold up, there's Black media where I am among the first people to talk about COVID. The section over here is from the article I just showed you, and there's a point to this message. The ADOS network has remained largely silent about the impact of the novel coronavirus on Black communities. The purpose of that isn't just about corona. It's to cast us as crazed, as people that are enraged, as people that are chaotic. But the reality is, I spoke about the coronavirus before these authors spoke about the coronavirus likely. So, and it was in Black media, but you don't know how to look in Black media because you might not understand Black folks use Black media like your web. So you shouldn't have missed this. This is libelous and both slanderous. Come on.
I don't think they missed it. I don't think they missed that you were first. I don't think they missed that we both talked about it. I don't think they missed it. I think they just said something that was untrue, allegedly, and decided that they didn't care, because even by now you know that it's untrue. We have tweeted enough and said enough that you know everything you said in there was untrue. You know that both of us have tweeted about it. You know that Antonio was first about it. You know that on my show I said wear your mask. By now you absolutely know that. So the question becomes, what was the intent to cast us as these wild and crazy Negroes who didn't have any sense? And I think you already said it. The whole point of that was to make sure that nobody paid attention to us, that nobody took us seriously. And the saddest part about it is how many ADOS and other Black people kind of fell for that. You have to ask yourself, how easily manipulated are you that you listen to other people and let them tell you who you're supposed to listen to? No, go down my timeline. Go down Antonio's timeline. Go down our list of videos. You figure it out for yourself. And that's the problem. Everybody's been feeding off of CNN, feeding off of MSNBC, as opposed to doing your own research. Everything you want to know about me is either on YouTube or my Twitter timeline. You don't have to go and listen to what Joy Reid or anybody else has to say about me, and you shouldn't, because that means you're a sheep. And sheep get led off to the slaughter in that sense. And that's what has happened to us. We don't have leadership. And when we try to rise up and say, hey, there's a problem, people say, oh, well, but Joy Reid says use a bot. What does she know about anything?
And don't forget, Angela Rye, there was a whole article done in The Intercept where she had this meeting. She implied that ADOS was bots with no proof.
Nothing tangible.
The Intercept covered it. You can read the whole article. But I believe, I can only say, what this is basically an attempt to make us so controversial that we can't do politics for you. We can't do politics for you because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is ABC, NBC, New York Times, NBC, they cast us as crazy, and we not on MSNBC saying that reparations is the most important thing. Nobody says this is crazy tonight. Nobody says this is bordering on. I mean, these people didn't vote for Biden. Let's just start there. And also, we come from U.S. chattel slavery. Yvette, let me read something else to you, and I want to get your opinion.
Well, these people can't vote. They can't vote, but they want to win them over. Like, understand why that's happening. They want to win these people over. Have you be a citizen and understand what the Democrats did for you, so you'll be our voters. Everything is a play to get somebody else's vote except for ours.
Because we're a capture group.
Yep.
And that's the point of Down Ballot Democrat. It was basically to pressure real commitments, and then if they fail those commitments, then the next election you get more dynamic, and then you say, "Well, I don't believe you will ever adhere to those commitments." But we haven't been doing politics. We've been sitting on the sideline, poking holes at a hose. Let me read this. I also tweeted after I tweeted the original tweet to this S. Gurman, this writer, about why do we have to do a study? They jumping right to the money, and understand they're not even the ones advocating. It's the ACLU and Biden's administration. That's who's advocating. They don't have a vet and Antonio pushing against the wall. Two more questions. Why isn't there reparations? Let's be clear. Talking about these migrant workers, because I don't want nobody to get lost on this point. They're being paid for their families being separated for a certain period of time, from 18 to I think 19, 18 and somewhere around that, and 19, and they're targeting just those families. I read earlier the number of families and the amount of money is very specific. Well, there's a question to be asked, because HR 40 makes no sense. One, that it's a study. We don't need a study, just like they don't need a study. We need to get right to money. Money that goes into the family's hands and makes them elite. Adolph's families, American descendants of slavery. What do I mean? Two more questions. Why isn't there reparations, the reparations we just talked about, for all Hispanics? Like ours. It's for all Black people. So why isn't there reparations for this border thing just in a Hispanic fund? That's the way they did ours. Go read HR 40.
Like, that's how HR 40 is written. HR 40 is written just for Black people. It doesn't have any kind of specificity.
So for all Hispanics, like HR 40 is a study for American reparations for our families' enslavement, yet it's for all Blacks that have any descent from Africa. That's what Incobra's talking about. In addition, also, why is it $450,000 a person? Who came up with that number? Why is it that number? Why is it so big? These people are going to go to a country where it's $3 a day to live. Even if they're here, are there going to be guards against that money leaving America? We don't need the money leaving America.
Well, hold on, Antonio. Let's answer the other question. Whenever we talk about what ADOS gets paid, we get inundated with questions. Well, why is it that much? How y'all going to determine who was really here? How you figure it out? How do I know who was separated at the border? Y'all, listen, I can guarantee you that the Border Patrol didn't take good records and people gave you all kind of names with fake IDs. So nobody asked y'all, well, how you going to figure out who was really at the border? How you going to figure out who really got separated? How you going to figure out who really got whatever? That's what y'all do me. How you going to figure out who's really ADOS and who's not? How you going to figure out this? How you going to figure out that? How did you get to that number? Can you pull out your calculator for me? All that kind of stuff. But they get nothing. They get closed door meetings to put this stuff in there and do it and just make sure it gets done. That's how advocacy looks when you have people, and that's how social engineering looks when you're trying to change America. That's what it is. None of that happened to us. Everything with us is how can we not do that for these people? Everything for them was how can we make this happen for them people? And that is the injustice of America, and we should not let this stand. Let me say this again. Everybody should reach out to whoever represents you in the White House. Say this is we're not going for this. If you ever want ever want to see top of the ticket again, we did down ballot Democrat last time. But if you ever want to see us vote for a presidential candidate again in this life, you cannot do this.
Now, let me say, we're going to end the show in a second. In addition, even if they stop here, it's over. Like, it's already the fact that they were willing to discuss this on this day of any days, the day of his budget coming to, it means that this is a vitally important part of their whole administration.
Yep. So
even if it doesn't get passed, they decide to stop now. Why were you talking about this? And then you basically silenced us on reparations. As I understand it, black leadership was told reparations is a no-go.
Yep,
it's not going to happen.
And they went with it. They said, "Well, they said they're not going to do it. We're going to walk off." That's not how you do politics.
Yeah, man, Yvette, I just wanted to come and have this discussion because nobody else is going to have it. Not at this level. And I just wanted to get with you and have this discussion. Any last thing you want to say to the audience?
No, I just want to say, there are certain times in life where you just stand up or you sit down and you'll look back and you'll wonder about your life. And everybody, when they get old on your deathbed, you have certain regrets. If we as a group don't stand up you're going to look back at this and you're going to say, man, I really had an opportunity to stand to make sure ADOS was able to thrive and survive in this country. And I set it out. And it's not a time to set it out. And if you ever needed any kind of, you know, kind of assuredness, right, that you were on the right path and you were fighting on the side of justice, this is it.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Please go to Breaking Brown on YouTube or Tonetalks on YouTube. We come on weekly, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, around the same time in the evening. Just check our Twitters. And we're trying to have this discussion and keep this dialogue going. Whew, I don't know how they got here, but we're going to make sure they understand, period. Thank you.